Hi, I'm Linda Brudz, and today I'm going to show you how to make Petit Fours glacé. This is a classic finger pastry made with layered cake and jam and glazing fondant. It is, in France, referred to as Petit Fours glacé because Petit Fours just means cookie in France, and glacé means iced finger pastry. What we're going to start with today is the almond paste and the sugar, and this goes in our mixing bowl. And the sugar. We're going to turn the mixer on to first a low speed to get it started. Lock the mixer up. And increase the speed. And when it's all mixed together, I'm going to add the softened butter. So now I'm going to add the butter. And that's going to be mixed until it's light and fluffy. And it's almost there. I'm going to scrape down the bowl. That helps with my mixing. There we go. There we go. That's what I want. You can see it's a lighter color. You can even go a little longer, but it looks different than when we first started. Now I'm turning down the speed. While the mixer's running, I'm going to add the eggs, trying to do it one at a time. If you get a little more than one, it's okay. The reason we do it slowly is so we don't shock the batter, is what it's referred to, meaning if you add it all at once, you reduce the chance that you're going to mix it in well together. So we do it in slowly. And there goes the last egg. Give it one more scrape. Make sure all the egg is in. The last ingredient I'll add is flour. Now this is all-purpose flour. I don't want it to toughen the cake, so I'm going to add it all at once. I'm going to put the mixer on its lowest speed. And only mix it for about 15 seconds until all the flour is incorporated, and stop. Now I will take my pan. It is already prepared. I've sprayed it with oil and lined a piece of parchment paper on it. The parchment helps the baking and helps us remove the cake afterwards, so it's fairly important. I'm just going to scrape this with my fingers right here onto our, we refer to this as a half sheet pan. You may know it as a jelly roll pan. Make sure you get all your batter. This cake will not even itself out as it bakes, so you need to get it even before it goes in the oven. So the way I'm going to do that is with the edge here of my spatula, I'm going to bring it first to the corners, turning your pan if necessary. You can see it's very thin, but it's very important to get it all over the sheet pan. Now I'm starting to even it out and very gently coming across in one direction, then this direction, and this direction, and this direction. I see a little hole there, so I'm going to go back with my very clean fingers and get over that. And that's pretty even, and we're ready to go into the oven. It will go into a 375-degree oven for about 15 minutes. You want to see the edges just golden and the top of very, very pale golden color, and you will know it's done. Now we're going to make the glazing fondant for our Petit Fours. We're using a recipe from Helen Fletcher from her book, The New Pastry Cook. First we'll put in our water. And then a little bit of corn syrup. Don't be afraid. It's just a little bit. I know it has a bad name. But it helps the sugar from crystallizing, so that's why we need it in this recipe. Don't leave it out. And then we're going to add our sugar. Now, an important thing to do at this stage is to use your hand to make sure all the sugar is dissolved a little bit in the water. If you don't, you'll cook the sugar in a big mass instead of having a liquid. So we just want to get it, I'm just kind of scrunching it until the sugar is not in a big ball. Now I'm going to put on the heat to a medium. I want the sugar to just start dissolving. Then I'm going to increase the heat. When the sugar starts to look dissolved, I'll add my candy thermometer. So you will see on the edges it's starting to bubble. I'm going to increase my temperature because now I want to cook the sugar syrup. Be very careful at this point not to stir this syrup, not to shake the pan. That will start crystallization of the sugar, so we leave it alone. I'm going to put my candy thermometer in now. And as a matter of fact, when I put it in very carefully so I don't disturb the sugar syrup all that much. There's a clip in the back. I clip it right to the pan. I make sure the red part is in the sugar, and I let it go until it reaches the soft ball stage, or 240 degrees. So the first thing we'll do when it hits a temperature, we have about 2 more degrees to go, we're going to take the candy thermometer out and clean it. If I don't clean it, again, I risk crystallization of the sugar, which I don't want to do. Then I'm going to reinsert it so I can monitor the temperature in the food processor. And here we go. We are set. So I'm going to shut off the heat. This is hot, so you may want a towel or something to help you hold that. I'm going to pour it directly into, with the blade in the food processor, very important. Can't put that in afterwards. See how nice and clear our sugar syrup is? That means I avoided crystallization. I've cleaned and dried the thermometer thoroughly. I'm going to reinsert it into the sugar syrup. I'm going to try to clip it to the side here, and that worked. The thermometer's still hot. But I have the red part inserted into the sugar syrup. And I will now wait for it to get to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So our sugar syrup for the glazing fondant has reached 140 degrees. I'm now going to remove the candy thermometer very carefully. You can see the syrup is still very clear. That's good. It hasn't crystallized on me. We're going to stick that right in the sink. Now, if you want, this is the time to add some flavoring and some color. So I'm just going to add a couple of squirts of vanilla extract. You can use almond extract too. And I'm using a pink paste color, tiny, tiny bit. I'm just going to poke the top of it. I don't want to disturb the sugar too much. I'm going to try to go for a very pale pink. We'll see how I do. Now I put the top on. I'm going to put this on the high speed for about 2 to 3 minutes until it turns from this clear into an opaque white color. Well, it'll be pink because I colored it. So I'm going to shut it off now. I think we are done. It's a nice pale pink color, which is exactly what I wanted. It's really opaque, which is what I want. It's still too warm to use right now. And we're also going to have to thin it out to use it for the Petit Fours. But right now, all I'm going to do is get it out of this, because if I don't, it will stick and be impossible to get out. It's probably right now between 110 and 120 degrees. And for glazing the Petit Fours, we want it no more than 105 degrees, probably closer to 95 degrees. You can use a chocolate thermometer to monitor that, or you can just wait till it just feels as warm as your skin, since your skin is about 100 degrees. So now I'll show you how to assemble the Petit Four cakes. We have here the baked almond cake. So the first thing I need to do is loosen the sides. I have a serrated knife. I'm going to go around the edges with that serrated knife, just to loosen the cake. Remember, there's parchment underneath. Now I have a ruler, and I'm going to measure 5.5 to 6 inches across, because this is an 18 by 12 inch pan. So I have here about my 5.5 to 6, making a little mark. I'm going to do it again. I think I'm going to do it right there. And now I'm going to cut the line. Now here's a tricky part. Underneath I have that parchment. So I'm actually going to try to go through with my knife and cut over the parchment. And now I'm going to rip that off. See how it comes off? The parchment is underneath. I'm going to put this on a cutting board. And here I have some apricot preserves. I put this through a small food processor to make the pieces less chunky because we want a very, very thin layer of apricot jam. You need about half a cup. It's more looking at how thin it is than by the amount. So you can see you're seeing the cake underneath, very small amounts. But I do want to get to the edges because we want to be able to get all those Petit Fours. If I don't get to the edges, it's not going to layer properly. You won't get all that jam in between. This is where people forget, in those corners. Okay, so there's my first layer. Now I'm going to cut the second layer the same way. Now, because I want to take off the parchment, I'm going to flip it this way. See, the parchment's up, and then I pull off the parchment, and I'm ready to spread jam on that layer. Get it all the way to the edges as we did the other cake. Now I'll lift up the last piece and put it on top. See, they're not perfectly even, but I don't care. I'm going to use a ruler to make sure I cut perfectly straight lines. See, I put the edge of the ruler on the side of the cake. I'm using a serrated knife. I also have by me a tall cup, if you will, or vase of hot water. This is going to help clean the knife between cuttings, which will give me cleaner cuts. So let me put that in, kind of take off the excess water, and come across. And it can be in a sawing motion. That's why we're using the serrated knife. Those scraps are for you to taste and enjoy. So now I'm going to even off the short end so I can start cutting my squares. And those are scraps for the chef. You should always taste everything you make to make sure it's yummy. And now I'm going to cut squares the other way. And here you go, your perfect little Petit Four ready to be iced. So now we're on the final step of finishing the Petit Four glacé. We're thinning out the fondant and getting it to the right consistency for dipping. So over here I have the fondant we made over what we call a bain-marie, which is just boiling water underneath. And that's, as you can see, it's getting it thinner underneath as it's warming it up. Behind the pot I have a sugar syrup of 1 part water, 2 parts sugar. In this case it's a half a cup of water and 2 parts sugar. I'm actually going to turn this off heat because it's warm. I just want this warm. It doesn't have to be boiling. But this I'm going to work a little longer until I'm happy with the consistency. I'm going to take it off the heat right now so I can stir it better. Now at this point I'm going to add a little bit of the syrup. I think I'm going to need about half of this syrup, but I don't want to add it all at once. I want to add it in little bits until I think I'm at the right consistency. The fondant can't be too hot or the shininess of the glaze goes away. So I have a ladle here, and I'm adding about 2 tablespoons at a time, which is about 1 ounce. I'm just going to pour that right in and smush it around with my spatula. I'm using a spatula because I don't want to add air, which a whisk might do, and also the fondant would get stuck all over the whisk, and that would be a pain. So the spatula is going to allow it to mix without getting stuck all over. So I'm going to continue to add this sugar syrup until I like the consistency. So I'm checking the consistency. It still looks pretty good. If it starts getting thick, I can put it back over the hot water to heat it up and make it thinner. I'm going to dunk this guy right in. Use a spatula to help me take him out. Let him drip. Come underneath with my fingers. Put him there. A little crooked, but he's okay. Now if I wanted to decorate them, I have some things here. I have some gum paste flowers that I can put on while the fondant is still not quite set. Remember when we decorate in odd numbers. So 3, 1, 5. And this one I'll put on a sugar pansy. And I happen to have another one here where I have these really lovely sugared rose petals that are pieces of rose petals. I bought these, but they have a nice effect too. So there's different ways to decorate them. Some are easier than others, but they all look beautiful. Enjoy.